Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Thursday Thrashin' Friday. It's about 12 o'clock here in Colorado. I'm sorry, 10 o'clock here in Colorado, 12 o'clock on the East Coast. I am Vince Russo on this very, 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 very solemn day. And this is really a very, very, very solemn day. What is going on, everybody? It's really tough to be up and upbeat today. Bro, I've been a card-carrying KISS Army member for literally 48 years. I've told the story so many times on this show. I purchased my first KISS album on my 16th birthday. 16. And it was Rock and Roll Over. And I threw it on the turntable. I believe the first song I heard was Take Me, Put Your Hand in My Pocket and Grab Onto My Rocket. And I was absolutely hooked. I became a member of the KISS Army. I had wall-to-wall photos of KISS in my bedroom. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen them in concert, far and away. 5 times more than I've seen any other band. And especially, man, you know, being a 16-year-old kid and growing up with KISS in high school, man, there was such a presence of power behind KISS, man. And man, a lot of times when you're a teenager, you know, you go through ups and downs. I swear, guys, this is an absolute true story. And I'm going to be quick because we got a real special guest today that I didn't even advertise because I wasn't sure if he was going to make it in time or not. But I see him sitting in the green room. So I'm going to be real quick. Guys, this is an absolutely true story. You know, you're a teenager. You go through ups and downs, man. Life can be tough. You think every little thing, it's the end of the world. I'll never forget, man, there was a series of 4 KISS posters. Probably the best looking posters I've ever seen. And any KISS fan is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. There was one poster in particular that was a photographer was at the feet of Gene Simmons while he was in concert. So the photographer was shooting Gene up. And Gene literally looked like he was 10 feet tall. And with that demon makeup and that look on his face and that axe bass, man, when you were a teenager and I looked at this poster, bro, I felt like there wasn't anything I couldn't do. That is an absolutely true story. And I remember, man, you know, like I said, you know, January 24th, 1977, I got my first KISS album on my 16th birthday. And about 9 months later, my friend and I, Chakurta, KISS was playing 3 nights at the Garden. 3 nights at the Garden. And we got tickets for night 1 and night 3. And guys, I swear to you, I crafted this KISS calendar, and every single day when I woke up, I was crossing out a day. That's how excited I was and how much I anticipated seeing them back in 1977. And listen, man, they've done some things I haven't agreed with. But when I'm a fan and I'm loyal, I'm a fan. And I don't want to go on anymore, man, because I got a very special guest waiting for me to pull him in. And when I knew I was going to do this show today, guys, I'm telling you, this man was the first one to pop into my head. And I know he doesn't do too many things anymore. You know, bro, there's a lot of us that as we get older, we want to get further and further away from the wrestling business. I wish I could, but this was not going to be a show about wrestling. And when I asked him to do it, he said, no problem. Dale, I see you. I feel like I want to cry.
I feel you.
I know, you know, the time we spent together, you portraying the demon, and it Dale, it's not even really about that. Your love for Kiss was my love for Kiss, and the opportunity you got was like, I mean, for any Kiss fan, man, you're talking about the ultimate dream come true. You know, yeah, this is the man that portrayed the demon on WCW, the biggest Kiss fan of them all. And Dale, I got to tell you, man, when Dale, what happened was, you know, I knew word wasn't really coming out about Ace. We knew he canceled tours.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was watching a podcast the other day with a serious Kiss fan, and he brought up the stroke. And he said, Ace had a stroke. Nobody's talking about it. He canceled his tours. But I'm still thinking, you know, Dale, every time we hear something like that, and it's somebody we really and truly love, you know, your first knee-jerk reaction is, he'll be okay. He'll be, you know, a little stroke. We're talking about, you know, the spaceman here. No little stroke is going to keep him down. And Dale, then I'm out yesterday eating dinner by myself because my wife is away. And a musician friend of mine texted me. And bro, this was before the news was out.
Right.
And he knew of a former girlfriend of Ace's. And he said, Vince, I got to tell you, I just heard from so-and-so and Ace has died. And it wasn't even out there yet, Dale. And I'm still saying to myself, no way, like, no way. No, this is just a rumor. This is not, you know, verified anywhere. And then, of course, man, I got in my car. I put on the radio and it was, you know, Sirius on 70s. And I heard it officially. So, like, Dale, I first want to, we got to get into the background with you and how this all started. But before we do that, I need you to tell me, man, how you felt when you heard this news.
You know, originally I had heard about the fall, that he had fallen in his house. And then I had gotten word from somebody saying, hey, he fell again. And it's really bad. And supposedly, you know, he has a brain bleed. I didn't, you know, wasn't the, you know, I heard about the stroke, but they kind of said, no, that's not it. It's a brain bleed. And I was actually on the radio yesterday with a friend of mine in the Monsters in the Morning, and we had just gotten, he asked me about it. And I said, well, you know, I heard he's doing better. You know, you don't want to push things that aren't true, but at the same time, it was a hopeful thing that he was getting better because you hadn't heard a whole lot. And by the time I got home, somebody had reached out to me and said, hey, I had heard that Ace passed. And I'm like, come on, man, you know, because like you were saying, these guys were superheroes to us. I mean, I know if you're not a Kiss fan, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, there's going to be people like, oh, what is it? He's a musician. What's the big deal? It was such a big part of us. I think that I grew up when I was 5 years old. My brother Doug brought home the Destroyer record, and I was hooked. I mean, looking at that cover and listening to those songs and, God of Thunder, and, it just it just had me hooked from that moment on. And I was a huge Kiss fan my entire life. So again, like you were saying, getting to do the demon character was a dream come true. But beyond that, I mean, I got to know all these guys, and it's just waking up this morning for the first time that I can remember since I was 5 years old. The original four members, one of them is not on this planet anymore, and it's just hard to kind of wrap your head around. And again, there are going to be people watching this not understanding what that means. Of the original four members of Kiss will never reunite again. We'll never see them together. And part of I got a I don't know how many texts I got yesterday and messages, and I kept saying, part of our childhood died yesterday. And so I get that. And I'm wearing tribute to Ace. I get that, what you're feeling of going, man, you said you were kind of in tears. Literally, a part of our childhood's gone. I know that we're older now, and people are like, you need to grow up. Yeah, we get it. But they were superheroes to us growing up all through. And you're talking about those posters, and the poster that was Ace's in that set was him with the smoking guitar.
Smoking guitar,
And
absolutely,
you
yes,
can't get
yes,
any
yeah,
more iconic
yeah.
than, there's bands that come out now, and the younger generation watching this probably won't understand what those four iconic figures meant to us. And that there's not a lot of bands now where all the members of the band, they each had their own identity. Yeah, we came from a time of Van Halen, where we knew the bass player was Michael Anthony, David Lee Roth, Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen. You knew each member. But even more than that, obviously, well, Kiss were big fans of the Beatles, and there were four distinct personalities there. And now you had the four distinct personalities of Kiss, and the spaceman is gone. And it's hard to kind of wrap your head around that one of those guys is gone. And then the same day that we hear about Ace being in a hospital and he had taken that fall, is the same day we hear that Gene had that accident in Malibu. And you're seeing how fragile life is. And granted, we're getting up in age, that they're obviously, if they're 20 some years older than I am, then they're getting up in age. And when you have Peter at 79 years old, it's inevitable. But you're always, like you said, you're hoping, for Ace, you were just hoping he was going to kick out on two. Let's, come on, Ace, you can do this. But it wasn't to be.
Yeah. I want to show everybody, I want to show you guys this picture that Dale sent to me yesterday. I mean, God.
Yeah.
Dale spent a lot of time with these guys, and we're going to talk about that. But Dale, you said you said two things that kind of go hand in hand. When you said we'll never see the original four, and then you talked about the Kiss and the Beatles. Dale, for me, as much as I revered and looked up to and idolized Kiss, the Beatles have always been number one for me. And it's funny, Dale, because I just saw Paul McCartney at 82 years old Saturday night at Coors Field.
Wow.
He's still playing music at 82. But, I swear, Dale, like that was my first thought. And it was very much, first of all, the way John Lennon died was shocking. John Lennon was assassinated. But it was like once you got over that shock, the first thing was there's never going to be a reunion. That's it. I mean, because especially with the Beatles, they always used to talk about the reunion. And it's funny, bro, because listen, Ace hadn't played with them in a while, but they were all going to be together again at the Kennedy Honors, which is, I think it was only a couple of weeks away. And I'm like you, Dale, it's like when you hear it, it's shocking and you're sad and you're gutted. But then the reality comes to bro, you're never going to see those four guys together again. And I think that's what's really, really hard for any Kiss fan to digest.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think Ace was really looking forward to the Kennedy Center honors. And, you know, it's just, again, it's hard to fathom that they won't be in the same room. They'll never be in that same room, because you're always hoping that they would do something, whether it was a meet and greet deal without the makeup on and the four original guys going on tour. You're just, you know, you're hoping that would happen. And I will tell you, I mean, I feel truly, truly blessed. And I think sometimes when people hear me talk about some of this stuff, they probably think I'm full of it, but I'm just truly blessed. I had such a great experience just being able to grow up a Kiss fan, to represent the band in WCW, to represent Gene, and to get to know that, like the picture right there of getting to see that Ace, and you can see Ace has a smirk on his face because he had said something to me right before. And just to be able to hang with these guys. And I have one of my absolute prized possessions, it's on the wall here, is when, you know, it was such an up and down deal for me that when Brian Adams got to the gimmick, originally it was supposed to go to me, then it didn't go to me, and then it went to Brian, and I love Brian, and I went out to Vegas to try to help him with the mannerisms of doing the Demon character, him getting to be on stage with the band, and Nitro, you know, it would have been a dream come true. But, you know, I ended up getting the gimmick. I got to know the guys, but that night in WCW, I got a picture with the original four members in makeup. And it is such a cool thing. And I know you and I got to spend time with the original four in Atlanta backstage at one of the shows. So to be able to have video footage of me with the original four, a signed picture of the original four. I've got, you know, Peter's drumsticks over here is from Nitro. One of the sets of sticks is from the show, the Nitro show. But to have that with the original four is, you know, such a prized possession. And you're not gonna have that ever again. People aren't gonna be able to get that picture with the original four. So I had always cherished that, and now more than ever.
Hey, you know, Dale, I want to back up a little bit because I don't know how much of this story you know, but I'm probably going back to about 96. Okay, I would guess it was probably 1906. Bro, I'm at Vince's house and we're writing TV, and it was just the two of us, right? And listen, man, when you know Vince, like Vince doesn't know anything about nothing that isn't wrestling. He knows nothing about sports, music, nothing. All he knows is wrestling. So, bro, I'm sitting there with him. I swear to God, Dale, and he goes to me, Vince, do you know anything about this band Kiss?
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly, Dale. I'm like,
this band Kiss, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, Vince, I know a little bit about. Well, this guy keeps leaving messages with I forget his assistant's name, and he says he's Gene Simmons from Kiss. So I'm like, well, Vince, I don't think that's a prank call. I mean, who's going to call Vince's office and say, this is Gene Simmons from Kiss? I said, Vince, I don't think it's a prank call. I said, you're talking about a guy, you know, with licensing and promotion and knows how to make money on top of money on top of money. He may have a business deal or idea. I said, Vince, I would take his call. I said, take the call. So, bro, sure enough, Vince wound up taking the call, and him and Linda went to dinner with Gene, right? And, bro, it's so funny because we see the condoms and the coffins and you name it, bro. You name it. There's whatever you want, Kiss, toilet paper, it's there, right?
Right.
So, bro, of course, they go to the meeting and he brings Vince all this shit. And like that stuff means nothing to Vince. Like literally, if I didn't smarten Vince up about what a Kiss fan I was, that shit would have went in the garbage, right? But the coolest thing Gene gave him was, Dale, do you remember when they were on the cover of Playboy?
Yes.
And I think they were in the centerfold.
Right.
I think. Well, Gene gave Vince a copy of that, and Vince asked Gene to sign that to me. And like, I still have that to this day. So to make a long story short, Dale, here's where I'm going with this. He pitched the demon character to Vince, and he laid out the whole story. We're going to start with the demon, then it's going to be the Star Child. Bro, Vince not knowing Kiss, he was never going to grasp that. He didn't know Kiss. He didn't know music. He didn't know pop culture. He wasn't going to grasp it. And he said to me, he said, Vince, he goes, this guy is such a salesman. Like, I just don't know how to tell him no. And I said, well, Vince, if you don't want to do it, just be honest with him and tell him no. And to make a long story short, Vince told Gene no, and then he called Eric Bischoff. So now this is why I'm laying that all out for you, because now this is how you got involved. So please walk me through, because you just mentioned it was Bryan Adams first. Walk me through how it became you.
Yeah. So, we had heard, you hear rumblings and the wrestlers are always talking. And I had heard that there was a possibility that they were going to do a Kiss character. And I put my name out saying, hey, listen, I'm, biggest Kiss fan. This has got to be something that I get a shot for. So I had done Monday Nitro in Chicago, blew my knee out. And I was supposed to actually go to see the opening night of the Psycho Circus tour. And it was in Dodger Stadium.
Yep. But
because of blowing my knee out, I was supposed to go with Paul Gargano, who was the editor of Metal Edge magazine at the time. And we were going to go, and I'm, now I'm crushed. I'm like, I blow my knee out. Now I'm not going to go see Psycho Circus at Dodger Stadium, where my dad played, as his career in Dodger Stadium. So that doesn't happen. So I'm on the shelf for about 6 months, and the first day I get cleared, I go to the power plant, and you remember that old power plant, not the newer one. That old power plant was like in a carpet warehouse.
Yeah.
And you could hear when the phone would ring in the front, you could hear it all through the back.
Right.
And there was an intercom. And so I'm in the ring. I haven't been there probably a half hour. And I'm just trying to test my knee out, because I had dislocated my knee, torn the partial tear of the ACL and partial tear of the meniscus. So I had it all fixed and put back together. And so I'm just kind of testing it out. And the phone rings. You don't think much about it, because you're thinking, the power plant was a place where everyone was trying to get tryouts. So the phone was ringing all day long. Well, Jody Hamilton ends up, he on the intercom goes, Dale, if you're here, I need you to come to my office. And I'm thinking, from the baseball world, oh man, I just recovered from an injury. Right. This is the time I'm going to get released. Like, you're going, oh, this is good.
That's what's going to go through the mind of every freaking wrestler. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. I'm like, here we go. It's happening. Go in, and Jody says, have a seat. So I'm like, okay. And I go, is this bad? And he goes, well, it was Eric. And I'm like, so it's bad.
Of course. Right.
Yeah. So he goes, no, it's good. But Eric wants to see you in his office now. And I said, okay. And he goes, they've got some you might be interested in. I'm like, okay, good. Well, I'm not sure if this is still a work that they're trying to get me out of the power plant. Right. And, like, okay, lock the door. And when I leave, like, all right, he's done.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's amazing. Like, that is every wrestler's train of thought, everything that you're saying. But go ahead. So you go see Eric.
Yeah. And Eric, I talked to Janie, and Janie's like, he'll be with you in a second. So I go in there, and I'm talking to him, and he goes, hey, listen, have you heard about that? There might be a possibility of doing something with Kiss. And I said, absolutely. He goes, well, I hear you're a Kiss fan. I said, yeah, I'm a huge Gene Simmons fan. I've been since, I was a kid, since 5 years old. He goes, okay, well, the gimmick is actually going to be based on Gene Simmons. I'm like, awesome, And he goes, so, we're going to have you do, this is a Friday. He goes, we're going to have you do a tryout match in St. Louis. And I said, okay, great. And so this is going to be Sunday. He goes, you're going to leave tomorrow. And he said, here's the deal. I need you to do something special if you really want this gimmick. And I'm like, there's nothing I want more. And
Right.
he goes, so you've just been cleared relatively recently. And I'm like, yeah, an hour ago.
Yeah.
He goes, wait a minute. He goes, an hour ago? I said, yeah, I was just in the ring, just seeing how I got cleared, and I was just testing it. I said, I haven't even done really anything besides just kind of move around in the ring. So he goes, well, that's too bad. Basically, if you want this, you really need to do something special. Show me something special. I said, okay. And he goes, do you have someone you in mind that you'd want to work? And I said, yes, Johnny Swinger. He goes, see if he'll do it with you. And so I called Johnny. Johnny met me. We just talked out a match. And I just remember sitting there going, hey, Johnny, I go, let's just lock up. I'm going to push you off, and I'm going to do a drop kick right away, because I think if my knee's going to go, it's going to go on a drop kick. I was like, let's just not waste anybody's time.
Right.
It's like, if it's going to go, it's going to go, and let's just
Right.
deal with it. So we're at the arena, and I'm wearing the Psycho Circus clown shirt. That's a glow in the dark shirt, but it doesn't say anything else. And so we have like a 10-minute match plan. And as I'm going through the curtain, I'm about to go through, Eric pulls me back and he goes, hey, I need you to do Gene without doing Gene. And then pushes me forward. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I'm in my head now. I had never been that nervous before or since, because I wanted it so bad. And I was like, you know what? I won't do the tongue, because they didn't want to tip off that they were doing a Kiss gimmick.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of did the mannerisms of what
The
I thought.
the menacing, the big
Yes.
steps,
Slow, methodical, but
Yeah.
just kind of getting the essence of the demon character. So we go through, do drop kick, boom, the knee's fine. We go through 10 minutes, great. Walk through the curtain, coming back, and I said to Eric, I go, how was that? And he goes, got another job you can go to? I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to have to. And he goes, no, you got it. You did great. You got it. He said, I want to see you in my office on Wednesday. It was like Wednesday or Thursday. Get with Janie, or Janie's going to get with you. Come to the office, sign everything. Let's get it rolling. Awesome. Call everybody.
Now, Dale, I got to ask you a question. To your knowledge, how familiar was Eric with Kiss? Was he pretty familiar with Kiss?
I think he was. I think, he was familiar with pop culture, and, and that, to make a long story short, the reason I got it and then didn't get it is from what Andre told me. Andre Freitas from AFX Studios.
Yeah.
They went out, Eric and Andre went out and laid out the pictures, and it was Brian Adams, Canyon, and me were the three in the makeup. And Gene pointed to me and said, that guy looks the most likely, not like me, but who is the biggest? And he said, Eric said, well, Brian Adams, he's, 6'6", over 300 pounds. And so he goes, I guess Gene's image that he thought was, he was watching the WWE product and thought of Kane, a big monster.
Yeah.
And if that's what you wanted, then Brian was it. But Brian ended up, after that, he did the appearance on Nitro, where, they said it was the lowest rated segment. But again, I'm not going to get into the booking of that, but you put that after the main event and people thought the show was over.
Right.
And so there was a lot of extenuating circumstances of why it was so low or whatever. But, I get the reasoning behind it. But then Brian's like, he didn't feel comfortable doing the gimmick, knew there wasn't going to be any merchandising rights to go to him.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he called me. He did that appearance, and he did one where he called out Vampiro at Nassau Coliseum. And those were the only two appearances that he did. And he called me and he said, hey, man, WCW is going to be calling you. He goes, I bailed out of the gimmick. He goes, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. He goes, I told them, you guys made a mistake to begin with. Dale should have gotten it from the start. He's the one that needs to do this. And so I love Brian. Brian was such a great dude.
Great dude, man.
Great dude. And so I said, all right, thanks, man. I'll keep you updated. And sure enough, JJ Dillon called me probably 10 minutes later and said, I had just started doing the MVP gimmick,
Mm-hmm.
and doing the whole baseball. It was, we had just started that. And they said, here's the deal. Do you want to do this? We're going to have to stop the baseball gimmick. And if you want this, and to me, it was a no brainer. As much
Right,
as I
right.
love the MVP baseball gimmick,
Yeah.
I'm a diehard Kiss fan. Of course, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And knowing all the politics that went into it after, and losing my debut match to Terry Funk on, which wasn't technically my debut. My debut was actually against Rick Cornell on a Saturday night show, but it aired after Thunder.
Got you.
So,
Got you.
I lost my debut match. And, I guess if I had known the politics that were going to be involved in this, I still would have done it. I would have done it the exact same way, because I loved it. Got a chance to represent the greatest band in the world, in my opinion, and to represent a guy that I actually did a speech at Northwestern about the three people I admired most, and it was my dad, Don Mattingly, and Gene Simmons.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I just, I just sit there and go, it was a dream come true. My worlds collided and exploded into the demon. Don't care what people think about it. If you loved it, I love it. If you hated it, it is what it is. And a lot of people couldn't think for themselves at that time if they weren't winning. Oh, this guy sucked. Oh, this sucked. But the interesting thing is, as time has gone on, as you know, early on after WCW, there was burying of everything WCW, buried everything, every gimmick, everything. And you got to think back then, as you know, that gimmick came out at a bad time. If you really think about when everything was going reality based, and
Yeah.
then you have this Kiss gimmick of spitting the blood and doing the fire breathing and all that, as cool as it was, and so many people still loved that kind of the Vampiro, Muda, Dark Side, the
Yeah.
Insane
Yeah.
Clown Posse, that whole thing, and Sting. People love that. And I always thought you should have something for everybody in a wrestling show.
Absolutely.
There's so much demographic in there
Yep.
that some people love the funny, some people love the dark side stuff, reality based. It all fits in there.
Yeah.
And so people loved it, and some people hated it, but I love doing it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat, even though it was not the best timing. But so be it. It's part of, let's say, history.
So Dale, tell me the first encounter with the band. Now you're meeting them. Tell me what that was like and how that came about.
I had met the band before the whole thing. Even in college, I had gone to see Kiss at UIC Pavilion, and I met the band. It was kind of through some people, and I ended up meeting the band. Actually I was a film major at Northwestern. I got to do some stuff with Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck was like, "Oh, you got to talk to Gene for me," and all that. So we had that conversation. But just getting to know the band, I had an interesting experience, because the band wasn't happy with the way the character was
Yeah.
delivered.
Yeah.
Of going, they don't want to see that character get beaten.
Yeah.
So it was. I had told Gene, I said, one of the problems is it is so heavy on your side for the merch, that if you gave up some of that merch, then I think the character would have more of a chance, because that's really where you make your money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Dean, being a true consummate professional, said, "Bro," he goes, "if that is what's going to help this," he goes, "have them call me." He goes, we'll change the deal." He
Wow.
was that into it, and he's been amazing to me the whole time, from the time I did it until now. I just saw him 2 weeks ago in Orlando. He's been great with me. But I told WCW marketing and merchandising, I said, "Can you guys call him?" Because a lot of them were afraid of his attorneys.
Yeah.
People were
Yeah.
afraid of the attorneys.
Yeah.
And he was willing to change the deal. And that's why I had gotten the attorneys got nervous at WCW. I'd taken all the pictures and done everything for the video game. They yanked me out of the video game. There was some t-shirt stuff that I was supposed to be on. They yanked me out of that because they were afraid of what would happen later, even though Gene was like, we'll change it. We'll change
Yeah.
the deal to get you some merch, you know? And it didn't, I mean, the action figures didn't happen for me until years later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I know by the time I got there, it was dead. Like
Yeah.
they were doing nothing with it. And you know me, bro. This is my opportunity to work with freaking Kiss, and I'll never forget that show, Dale, that you're talking about. I'll never freaking forget it. Can you imagine Ted Nugent open for Kiss?
Yeah.
And they said to me, Vince, towards the end of Ted Nugent's set, we're going to come get you. We're going to bring you in the back. You literally got 5 minutes with them, right?
Yeah.
And Dale, think about this. Bro, here I am. I mean, at that age, at that time in, 96, I don't know, bro. I'm 40, 35. I mean, somewhere around there. I'm meeting these guys for the first time who I've idolized my whole life. And bro, I got to pull off. I'm a professional. I'm not a mark. I ain't going to mark out. And bro, my heart was in the pit of my stomach because bro, our relationship with marks, the last thing we want to be is a mark. So I'm not going to go back there and be a mark. I can't act like this is my first rodeo. And bro, I got to tell you, there's 2 things I remember from that. And believe it or not, Dale, I've got that on videotape. I made sure somebody videotaped it. I got it somewhere. There's 2 things I remember. Number 1, Gene was 1,000% into it. And like I was producing Gene. You need to say this, you need to say that. And like, what the fuck? Like, it was surreal. And the one thing that was freaking pissing me off, bro, was Peter kept pacing back and forth. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. And I was like, bro, I was cherishing every minute. And this guy just wanted to wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up. But you're right, bro. I mean, when I was with them, the absolute ultimate professionals, Ace was probably the most laid back, to be honest with you, out of the group. And I say that, Dale, because when we talk about Ace, and bro, come on, we could talk about the guitar playing. We could talk about the legendary stories. If you read his book, we could talk about the smoking guitar. There's a million things we can talk about. But man, bro, when I think of Ace, the first thing I will always think of is that Tom Snyder interview, bro.
Oh my God, the plumber.
I swear to God, Dale, if I'm sitting there and I can't find anything on TV, I've seen him on that show, and the look on the faces of Gene and Paul, bro, when Ace was drunk off his ass, and that freaking laugh, and he just hijacked the entire interview, and the look on Gene's freaking face. How legendary was that freaking interview?
It is. If people haven't seen it, they've got it. It's a Tom Snyder interview. Is one of the ultimate classic interviews of all time. And Ace was quick. I mean, when he goes, so you're, with the costume, you're a spaceman, or you represent a spaceman. You go, no, I'm actually a plumber. And when Tom Snyder says, well, I've got a little piece of pipe you can work on later, and Ace goes, tell me about it.
He kept popping himself. He was the one laughing at his jokes more than anybody. And if you guys just knew the history, how Gene and Paul were always the leaders and the front man, and Ace and Peter were always the fuck ups and the screw ups. And to have this big spot, that was a huge show back then, Tomorrow. To have that huge spot, and Ace took it over. Oh my God, bro.
I gotta tell you an Ace story that has to do with somewhat of WCW. So I'm backstage, and The Undertaker was actually there. Brian was there. Skid Row was there. I have a picture from that, and it's awesome. My wife Christy was there. It's just such a cool picture, right? And so I'm backstage. They're in full gimmick. They're getting ready to go on pretty soon. And I'm talking to Gene and Paul. And again, this is where Gene and Paul are like, what is going on with this gimmick? And I said, with them having you lose. And I'm like, you know what? You you have to do is make a phone call, you know? And so when we're actually talking, this is the time we're talking about the deal. And I think Ace did this on purpose to piss Gene and Paul off as we're talking. And again, remember, all four dudes are in full makeup, full costumes. It's just Gene, Paul, Ace, Peter, and me. And as I'm talking, I've got my back to Ace, and I'm talking to Gene and Paul about everything. And I'm getting like, who's pulling on my belt? Like on my belt, somebody is pulling. And I look behind and I go, hey, Ace. And he goes, hey. And I go, okay. And I turn around and I keep talking. And he goes, I had this skull belt and that I'd gotten in on Main Street in Daytona, bike week. So it was this full skull belt. He's like, I like your belt. And I go, thanks, man. You know, appreciate it. Start talking back with Gene and Paul. He goes, pulls it again. And he goes, hey. I go, yeah. And he goes, I like your sunglasses. I go, thanks, Ace. And he goes,
we're talking about a 5-year-old here, pretty much.
And he was I think he was doing it to piss them off.
Oh,
and he's like, I'm like, listen, I'm like, I'll get with you in a second, Ace, and I'll tell you where I got all this stuff. I can get it for you. And then fast forward to when I had to learn to breathe fire at Jones Beach. And I'm sitting, it was a cool time. I'm sitting with Gene, Ace, and Gene's mom at a picnic table backstage at Jones Beach. And Ace is like, where did you get those glasses? They were these metal flame glasses.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I go, here's the thing. He pulls out a check and writes the name of the company and the phone number on the check. And he's like, okay, I'm going to call him. And it just was, that was Ace. He just was, you know, a funny, you know, kind-hearted guy. He was a rock star. He just wanted to play guitar, live the rock and roll lifestyle. So a lot of ways we should be thankful that this didn't happen a long, long time ago.
You know, I swear to God, Dale, I don't read a lot, but if I do read something, it's always an autobiography. It's always an autobiography. And I'll be honest with you, the only Kiss autobiography I did not get all the way through because I was busy or whatever was Paul. But I read Gene's, I read Peter's, and I read Ace's. And I swear to God, bro, there were 2 autobiographies that I read. And when I was done reading them, I'm like, no way this guy should be alive. Like, no way. And it was Ace. And bro, the second one was Belushi. And like, but it's exactly what you said. I mean, you talk about the rock style life, and that's where the divide in the band really came. Because, you know, you think of Kiss and you think of rock and roll, and what do you always think about? You know, drugs and this and that and liquor and booze and partying. Bro, Gene and Paul didn't do that shit. Yeah, they had their women. There's no question about that, but they didn't do drugs. They didn't do alcohol. And you had Peter and Ace that did drugs and alcohol. So right off the bat, you had kind of a split band. And, you know, Gene and Paul were always perceived as the leaders, and Ace and Peter were always perceived as the fuck-ups. And that eventually is what led to, you know, the downfall. But I got to tell you, bro, and Dale, I bet you will probably agree with me on this. Bro, the most freaking heat I had with Gene and Paul was when they put that same makeup on Tommy and Eric. I'm like, bro, to a Kiss fan, to me, that was so sacrilege. There's nothing in the world, nothing against Tommy Thayer. I'm sure, I never met him, but I'm sure he's a great dude. Bro, no one in the world is going to be the spaceman. Because the spaceman had to be the spaceman. He had to be spaced out. And it's just funny, bro, because the way Ace moved on stage, he's trying to be a spaceman, but he looked like he was freaking drunk. Like nobody, bro, you can't just put that makeup on somebody. And the same thing, all the respect in the world to Peter. Peter's the cat man, you know, and when they did that, you know, I'm eager to get your response. I just felt Like, that was such a freaking insult to those guys. These were characters they created. I had no problem with Eric Carr. Okay, Eric Carr's the Fox, and even
Vinny.
Vinny Vince. I had no problem with that. But Dale, you're reacting like you don't. I understand the merch and the money, and that's number one with Gene. I get all that. But did that not bother you as much as it bothered me?
No, I think part of it is that the two, Ace and Peter, and I've gotten to know Peter over the years, and he's been tremendous.
Can I say one thing about
Yeah.
Peter? I swear to God, Dale, tell me if you felt the same way. I'll never forget, I'm reading Ace's book, and he's drunk half the time. He's stoned half the time. God knows what he's on. And I'm reading this book, and I'm saying to myself, bro, I don't know how much of this I could believe, because how in God's name did you remember? Like, give me a break with all the drugs and shit you took. But here's the one thing I loved about Peter's book, bro. Bro, he beat himself up. He took responsibility for so much shit. And that's why that turned out being my most favorite book, because he put a lot of heat on himself. But go ahead, Dale. I want to hear the rest of what you have to say.
He just, I mean, Peter, like I said, Peter's been awesome. Just for me, just getting to hang with him over the years, in the later years, just tremendous. I've got the drum head behind me that Peter signed for me. But in terms of the makeup and everything, I get what you're saying. As a diehard Kiss fan, I get it. But at the same time, both guys sold the rights to their makeup. They quit the band on multiple occasions, and it didn't mean as much to them as it meant to us.
Yeah.
And I think what they were trying to do, I think, is just those four faces are some of the most iconic in the world.
Absolutely.
They're most recognizable faces in the world. And instead of, they found the band that they wanted. Tommy and Eric Singer have you met Eric?
No, I have not.
Oh
no.
my gosh, you would love Eric. Eric is funny. The guy can talk. He's just a cool, down to earth, great dude. I did a podcast where I was on for 2 hours. He then pops on. We did a 4-hour podcast.
Oh, awesome.
He pops on, and he's just a down to earth dude, just a great guy. And we had talked about Cleveland and my dad. I used to go watch my dad when my dad managed the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah.
So we had this connection. But they were talking about it's iconic, those iconic faces, and they ended up branding it as the Demon Star Child, Spaceman, and the Catman.
Yeah.
And my different view on this, and I get what you're saying. I was just happy back when, Ace and Peter were out of the band. First, it was Eric came in, then Vinny comes in, and then you had, Eric and Vinny. I get that. But I am just thankful that we had some sort of Kiss band all the way through my life.
I agree with that.
And
I agree with that.
Revenge was one of my all-time favorite albums. And again, that's Eric and Bruce, two different, musicians on there. Loved Revenge. Gene finally kind of got back to himself, away from the Asylum, very flamboyant looking, gimmick. And, I was glad that he came back with the goatee, and it was him again. It was Gene again. But since I love that, I'm just glad that we had the opportunity.
Yeah.
And okay, I get it that, the makeup whole situation, in my mind, it's like it happened. If you were offered the opportunity to put that makeup on and tour with that band.
Oh yeah, I don't blame those guys at all. No, I don't blame those guys at all. I just felt like it was a little bit of a disrespect to the original. I don't blame those guys at all.
Think about this. Both guys, both Ace and Peter, performed with Eric or Tommy.
Yeah.
In makeup.
Yeah.
Ace played with Eric in the Catman makeup, and then Peter played with Tommy in the space. didn't bother them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we, as Kiss fans, make a bigger deal out of things than
Yeah,
it
well, yeah,
actually is.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Bro, you know what's funny? I swear to God, it's funny that you talk about revenge because I don't know, bro. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one. Vinnie Vincent only did one album with Kiss. Bro, that was my favorite album. I think Lick It Up was the best shit they ever did. And Vinnie Vincent was on guitar for that album.
Well, and Vinny technically was kind of behind the scenes of Creatures,
Yeah, yeah,
and
he
I
was. Yeah,
like that. Creatures
yeah,
got
that's a
harder.
those two,
Yes.
right there. I mean,
Yeah.
I those are I think those are my two favorite albums.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I will still sit there and I tell the story. I was, excuse me, I was in at Northwestern and I go, it's 1992. I go to the downtown Evanston record store and they're putting up a big display of Pearl Jam. And I said, can you, point me in the direction of the new Kiss record? And you've got these college kids working the record store like, Kiss, you know? So I go get the Revenge record and I said something to they're like, you need to put Kiss away. You need to get this Pearl Jam record. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
I
right, right,
don't
right.
want Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
I never liked Pearl Jam until more recently. I've kind of gotten to understand, but I didn't like Nirvana. I didn't like Pearl Jam because they killed my hair metal.
Right,
I didn't like that. I'm like,
right.
no, I'm
Yeah.
gonna fight against that.
Right,
But I
right.
remember asking the guy, I said, so how many of these albums, the Revenge album, have been sold? And he goes, including this one. And I was like, shut up.
Oh,
Like, and I
man.
take the record home, the CD, and I'm, it was in the long box, and I'm like, and I loved it. And I got to see them. That's where I got to meet them, was during the Revenge era. And
Yeah,
I got to meet Bruce and Eric and Gene and Paul. And I still think Revenge is, of the non-makeup,
yeah,
is my favorite record.
yeah.
I still, I mean, Destroyer, but I love one of the albums, and I will probably come off, and if they already think this, that's okay. The most uncool guy on the planet, and that's completely good.
Well,
I,
listen, hold on, bro. Let me just say this. You and I are in the top two because I think, Dale, you and I are the only two people on the planet with AOL addresses, bro.
yeah,
I popped huge when I got that. I'm like, thank God, there's another. There's another.
yeah. I sit there and I'm like, it's so easy. It's the three letters, and
Right.
I'm like, it still works.
Exactly.
I don't realize. I don't care. It's like
Right.
I probably have 30 emails, and I'm like, this is the one I use all the time.
Yeah, it's me too, man. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I sit there and where the uncool factor is, Dynasty is one of
Bro,
the best records.
bro,
With
Charisma is my favorite song from Kiss. My favorite song.
Charisma, Dirty Living, Hard
Yeah,
Times.
yeah,
The Ace songs are great. The Peter songs are great.
yeah.
Everyone wants to go to I Was Made for Loving You. That's great.
Oh, that's the
It,
worst.
but
Oh,
it's a great song. It
yeah,
doesn't matter that it's a disco. You've
yeah,
probably heard it so many times that and again, that's the uncool factor
yeah.
of, but you know what? It was a hit. And my age at that point, if that came out in 79, I was 8 years old. Do you think,
Wow, wow.
and
Yeah,
I just remember being crushed because my dad was managing the Cleveland Indians at the time, and the Cleveland Plain Dealer, he knew that the editor there, and the editor knew Bill O'Coin, and
oh,
said,
wow.
"Kiss is coming in." So again, 8 years old, somewhere in there,
Wow.
and he goes, we're going to be able to introduce your son to the band members."
Wow.
And at the hotel, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is great. This is unbelievable. It didn't happen. And I will tell you, at the time it sucked, but I guess the thing would have happened for me is that I was going to meet them at the hotel without makeup on. And one of the cool things that I always wanted was to see what they looked like without the makeup back in those days.
Yeah.
That might have ruined it for me back then. So I think it was a kind of a blessing in disguise that I
Yeah.
didn't get to meet them then. But they had sent, Bill O'Coin's management had sent a gift package to me.
That is
And it was
awesome.
the Dynasty album, and it was a signed picture of the band. And I have it somewhere, but it is the worst forgery job of all time. I mean, if I could find this and show you, it is the worst
Yeah.
because it's the secretaries, and
Yeah.
it looks absolutely
That
nothing
is
like
funny.
the
That
signatures.
is funny.
And I knew it then, but I'm like, I still had it on my wall growing up.
I am going to, one last question, Dale, and I'm going to let you go because, man, I appreciate this. This is great. You and I have not spoken I want to say one thing about Dale, too. And I want Dale to understand this, and I never said this to Dale. And I want Dale to understand this. Guys, you know how critical I am of Triple H and WWE creative. You know how critical I am because it's Wrestling 101. There's no stories. There's no characters. It sucks. This guy here, bro, you talk about a freaking creative mind. If WWE hired Dale Torborg and put him in creative, and Dale, let me tell you how I'm not bullshitting you. Because I remember at TNA standing there with you and you laying out the Metallica Master of Puppets. Oh. And when Dale Torborg is telling you, Vince, I can get Metallica, I know Dale can get Metallica. I know Dale can get these people. But I swear to God, Dale, my right hand to God, while you're laying this out to me, and this is coming from your brain to your mouth to me, all that's going through me is, bro, this is wrestling. They would never be able to pull it off. TNA, Jeff Jarrett would not understand it. Dixie, they would never be able to pull off what was in your head. But bro, the pitches you had for me were freaking brilliant. And that's why, Dale, I never forgot the Master of Puppets. I remember you laying that whole thing out and me saying, this is so many levels above their comprehension. I could never sell this to them because they'd never understand it.
Do you know, and I don't know how much time we have here, but if there is a story that I did pitch it to the Master of Puppets gimmick to the WWE. And what you had said, and it's interesting, there were wrestlers big time at that time that went to bat, including Jericho. And the problem was what you had said early in this is when they talked about Metallica, because Metallica they were going to play WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
When we set this whole thing up, and the people don't know what the Master of Puppets gimmick, and it's interesting because when you look back, a lot of the components in that Bray Wyatt storyline with the puppets and things, do you remember? I have it all still typed out, laid out, all the pictures.
Yep.
And a lot of that actually ended up in those, Bray Wyatt. I don't think that had anything to do with it, but a lot of those components were in there. But Vince didn't know who Metallica was.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so that was the year that Fred Durst, Limp Bizkit played WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But I had talked to Metallica's management. We had laid this whole thing out, and Metallica was behind it. And the storyline was so in depth. There was a way to actually, if you remember, the finish of the whole storyline was to be able to break away from the WWE and start WCW back up.
Yeah.
And it could have been anybody at the very end, how the storyline fell like a year later. And it just kind of fell on deaf ears.
Well, but I swear to God, it's funny. It's funny, Dale, that you bring up Bray, because here's what happened. Here's what happens, man. When you've got a talent whose level of intelligence, you can't, let me say this. Their level of intelligence is so superior, they should not be in the wrestling business. First of all, their level, and that's what happened to Bray. He had this level of intelligence. They didn't understand it. So when you can't meet that creatively, you're going to bring that talent down. You know what? I'm glad almost they didn't do that angle, because what it would have looked like by the time it was all said and done, you wouldn't have even wanted your name on it. They can't, outside of the wrestling bubble, they can't comprehend that. And bro, it is so funny you mentioned about them wanting to play Metallica. Bro, Joe Walsh had just come out with Rocky Mountain Way. He offered to play it free at WrestleMania. Vince said no because he had no idea who Joe Walsh was.
It's actually mind-boggling a little bit, but,
yeah. Dale, I want to tell you this one thing as it relates back to wrestling, and because I don't think you guys realize, bro, wrestlers love Kiss. They love Kiss because Kiss was a gimmick, and they loved it. But it's funny getting back to Ace. Okay. What do we do in wrestling all the time? Rib. We rib. I swear to God, Dale, knowing how Gene was and knowing how Ace was, you kind of get the feeling that it was a big rib and Ace just wanted to drive him crazy because Gene is so prim and proper and money and business. And you had this total screw off that knew that. And I think totally played off that.
I got to tell you, and I won't tell you the joke, but it was one of these cool experiences for me. Is I did a setup joke, and it's a joke where the person you ask, have you heard this joke? And you set them up, and I did it to Gene and he had people around. I'm thinking, hopefully he'll think it's funny. So I tell him this joke and I use him as the punchline.
Right.
He about falls out. And as he's falling out, he grabs me and goes, come here. And I'm like, oh boy. He grabs me, takes me to Paul, and he goes, ask him if he knows this. And I use Paul's name in the joke.
Right.
Paul falls out laughing. Gene pulls me again. He's like, come on. And I tell Peter, they find Peter. I tell Peter. Peter thinks it's hilarious. Using Peter's name, we get to Ace. And I tell Ace and use his name as the punchline. And to hear that cackle that he had, he thought it was an absolute riot.
That's
so
great.
I told all 4 original members of Kiss the same joke using their name as the punchline. But I can hear Ace's cackle to this day about how he thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Oh man, what great memories you have, Dale. And it's, man, Dale, it's I'm 10 years older than you, and I'm at the age now that we're really starting to lose people that were influences in my life, which means like, and there's a 10-year separation. So I'm in the next tier, like, and I know that, but my God, bro, like just the last few months, I mean, it started with Ozzy and then bro, Hogan, no, bro, I don't care what anybody says. I do not care what anybody says. The day Hulk Hogan died, the industry will never be the same. Ever, 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 ever. And now this, I mean, these are not celebrities. These are like icons. Like you said, Dale,
these transcend celebrity. And you put Kiss and Hulk Hogan, again, maybe the two, let's put the combined Kiss together, but the 2 most recognizable entities on the planet.
Absolutely.
Because you can, if you say pro wrestling or a pro wrestler, everyone knows who Hulk Hogan is.
Yep.
And you could show one of the band members of Kiss and you're like, that's Kiss. They might not know the names.
Right.
Who's who, but they'll be like, oh yeah, that's the guy with the star and that's from Kiss. And that's Paul Stanley. They're just the icons of icons. And then, you mentioned Ozzy, and our childhood, our youth is just disintegrating before our eyes. And I understand the circle of life. I remember talking to my dad about the Rat Pack. He had gotten to know Sinatra and all those guys. And when, Dean Martin passing away and in the documentary. By the way, thank you for watching the
Oh
documentary.
yeah, no, bro.
Yeah.
For people that don't know, I mean, Dale's father was Jeff Torborg, who was a, great baseball player, manager. I mean, you talk about iconic, man. Your dad's resume and his career, bro. I mean, definitely Hall of Fame material to me, man. What an icon your dad was, and you just recently lost him.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate it. And anybody that wants to watch it, it's on YouTube. It's Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life on YouTube. And
Yeah.
I've gotten so many from the wrestling world. The wrestlers have reached out. I got an unbelievable 3-minute long message from Sting.
Oh, that's awesome,
going
man.
through the documentary part by part.
Yeah.
And he's been incredible. And members of KISS have reached out to me and saying, wow, and I gave Gene the card, and it's got a QR code on it. And I said, Gene, you're in this. And so, he said I was going to watch it. And so, I'm so thrilled that people have loved it.
Yeah.
But in the documentary, you see how many of those icons that my dad took pictures with have passed. And there was a Western Union telegram from Cary Grant. Diane and Cary Grant, so my dad's, you watch my dad's generation, age and then pass away. And it's tough. And now we're reaching that. You said you're 10 years older. So you're reaching some of these people that you idolized growing up, and it's not going to be the same. And I get it. It's a circle of life. And people will probably say, well, quit your bitching. It's part of life. Well, I get it, but it doesn't mean we have to be happy to accept it. It's, that's part of our history. What makes you, you, and what makes me, me. KISS has had a huge impact on everything I've done. And this morning was the first morning that we all woke up, and there will never be the original 4 members of KISS ever again. That's a sad moment.
Yeah, Dale, you'll get a kick out of this. Then I'm gonna let you go, man, because you gave me so much of your time, and we're gonna do this. Yeah, we're gonna do this again. I got to tell you this story because you will crack up. I am a San Francisco Giant fan, and people always say, Vince, why are you a Giant fan? Why are you here? Because the Giants played in New York. My father was an avid New York Giants fan. My father was at the Bobby Thompson game when they moved to San Francisco in 1958. My father stayed loyal.
By the way, so was my dad. My dad was a Giants fan.
Okay, yeah. So Dale, bro, my dad's 94 years old.
Wow.
Okay, great. And I talk to him every single day. I know you can appreciate that. Yes, I know that.
Absolutely.
Dale, the second the Dodgers win, my phone rings and it's my 94-year-old dad cutting a promo. And I'm like, Dad, they're not in Brooklyn. There's no Ebbets Field, Dad. Get freaking out. Bro, he thinks it's 1950. But Dale, I swear to God, here's why I bring this up. Because being a New York Giant fan, bro, I swear to you, and I am not bullshitting you, to me, the loss of Ace Frehley, the loss of Hulk Hogan, that equates to the loss of Willie Mays. These guys were Willie freaking Mays. I'm sorry. I mean, Willie was my guy. These guys were Willie freaking Mays, man. No question about it.
You have so many things in common, because that was my dad's favorite. My dad said he's never seen a player ever as good as Willie Mays. He said the guy was on a different level, and just so that was my dad's favorite was Willie Mays. But you're right. I mean, it's what's interesting, and it's such a cool thing of dad playing for the Dodgers and catching Sandy Koufax's perfect game. The Dodgers actually have been amazing with me with the documentary. They shared it to every one of their alumni.
Oh, and, that's awesome.
They're the team that really went to bat. The Yankees and the Dodgers were the ones that really kind of went to bat for, they had my dad's name in Yankee Stadium for Old Timers Day as a tribute. That's awesome, that's a special thing. And then so for people to get to know my dad through this documentary, that's what I wanted. Not about, people can look up his career. It was about the human being.
Man.
How he treated people.
Yeah.
And that's the legacy that we wanted everyone to see. That's why that.
Dale, I can tell you this. I can tell you this firsthand, and I mean this from the bottom of my life. It's no coincidence that you're his son, bro. because I mean, I tell people this all the time, because you do get brought up, and bro, here's what I tell people all the time. You, without a shadow of a doubt, were one of the nicest, most genuine, sincere wrestlers I ever worked with in my entire career. And here's the problem. There are so many people like you who are so brilliantly minded, and you're on the outside looking in because you're too nice for the wrestling business, man. You, in order to have that longevity in the wrestling business, man, a part of you's got to be an a-hole. And when you're a straight up nice guy like you were, who would, give your back to anybody, unfortunately, rather than being embraced, people like that are taking advantage of. But the greatest compliment to you should be, bro, it's no secret you're his son, man, because I mean, bro, one of the most genuine guys I've ever had the privilege of working with, man.
It means a lot. It really does. And you're not the first one to say that to me. In terms of, I remember when I first got started training Neidhart, I trained with the two guys that trained me were Neidhart and Warlord. And Neidhart said, you're too nice for the business. And I said, well, and you've seen, I have the other side of me too. That can, kind of get the ass, and, but at the same time, I would tell people when they would either rip the gimmick or whatever, I'm like, you do realize that I have nothing to do with this. You know that somebody is writing this,
right?
And I have two options: do what they say, or go home.
Right. Yep.
And I said, so there's nothing when and I think that people follow the herd too often, and if there's a couple people saying I don't like this, yeah, and it's that group mentality. I don't like that either.
Right.
And then, but then you have what means the world to me is when somebody comes up and says, you're the reason why I started watching wrestling. You were my favorite character. I just went to SmackDown not too long ago. I saw Charles Robinson, and one of the big superstars was telling me, he goes, I was a big fan of yours. When I was growing up, I was a big fan of yours and the gimmick. And that means a lot because they're peers, and it's like, there's a lot of people that it's very easy to rip on the internet or whatever. And that, so be it. If that's what you want to do, say what you want about me. It doesn't matter anyway, but I did have to tell people, I'm like, you do know that I never won a match or lost a match. It was written for me to do whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I did it to the best of my ability, and whatever happens. And again, I didn't write it.
But Dale, what's so weird about that? Like, bro, if Vince would have signed a deal with Gene Simmons and I am Vince's head writer, that character is huge. So like, you've got to understand, if there was a real Kiss fan, it could have been the complete opposite. Like, that's all it would have taken for a Kiss mark to be involved creatively, and it could have been the complete opposite of what it was.
Yeah, but the crazy thing, I wouldn't have been a part of it. When you think about it, it would have been somebody else. And I just did a show with Brian Clark, and
another sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah. And he had said on the interview, he's like, there was nobody. And he said, I will promise you, there was nobody that could have done a better job in that gimmick than Dale. And that was, a true honor. I've got to tell you a really kind of quick, funny story about, a lot of times friends of mine would say, you're like Forrest Gump. You somehow are connected with everything.
Right.
Somewhere somebody's music, or how did you, AEW needed you to clear this music, or what?
Yeah.
So there's times where there's weird coincidences. So I did a live podcast in Orlando in the full gimmick with Cardona and Myers, right?
Okay,
for the Major Brothers. So I did it in full gimmick. They asked me to come, and then I did.
So this is recent.
This was a couple years ago.
Okay.
And I was in full gimmick, and then I was going to do a shot for Impact.
Okay.
So I actually drove from
In Gimmick.
Tin Roof or whatever in Gimmick to Lakeland, you know, and I'm trying not to look left or right at lights because I'm like, I can only imagine somebody doing the double take of like, what the hell is going on here? So I'm standing there and some guy looks at me and, you know, I'm 7 feet in these platform shoes and he looks up and I'm full makeup and he goes, "Kiss, huh?" And I was like being a smartass. I'm like, what gave it away? You know? And so he starts telling me, he goes, do you remember Remco? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I was Remco. And he goes, do you remember the Kiss makeup kit? I go, do I remember the Kiss
Oh
makeup
my
kit?
God.
I said, I probably can say the commercial verbatim, like, Kiss Your Face Makeup by Remco. And so he's like, oh, so you did. So the crazy thing that happened here is when I was in high school, I was I think I was a junior. We had a lip sync contest in Springfield, New Jersey, Jonathan Dayton Regional High School in Springfield, New Jersey. I'm Gene, full makeup, you know, from that makeup kit, right? So the crazy thing is that guy 10 years earlier went to my high school that created the makeup kit.
See, it's kismet, bro. It's kismet,
Yeah,
man.
I'm like, how is that possible that this guy actually went to my high school and I won the lip sync contest at my high school wearing the makeup kit that he designed?
That is incredible, man.
And that's normal. That's like normal for
Yeah.
me. I just told the guy, like I was telling Russ Rollins, I don't know if you remember, he's the radio DJ, Monsters in the Morning. He did some stuff with WCW with us. And we were just talking about, because he says all the time, he's like, you're like Forrest Gump. Sometimes I don't know how you do it. I said, did I ever, this was just yesterday at lunch. I go, did I ever tell you about the MVP gimmick? And he goes, well, I know about it. I go, but do you know who I met? And he goes, no. So I'm in Winter Haven, Florida at a fantasy camp. It's the first promo shoot I'm doing on the field in full gimmick. Now, Warlord and I came up with that MVP gimmick as the most violent player. It was basically Gene Simmons' essence in as the Warriors baseball character from the movie The Warriors, the Baseball Fury. So I had just taken these pictures, and the photographer had given me some of the proofs, and I had them out on the table. I went to like a Shell's Seafood or Bonefish Grill or something like that. So at the end of dinner, you know, we're finishing up, and the manager comes over and goes, "Hey, how was your meal?" And I was like, "Great, thanks." And you know, he looks at the pictures and he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's a wrestling gimmick that I'm working on." And I said, and he goes, "It looks like the movie The Warriors." And I said, "Yeah, exactly." I go, "That's where it came from." I go, "Baseball Fury," and he goes, I was one of those guys.
I knew that's where you were going, man.
Yes, and he gave me his card, and you could look him up on IMDb that he was one of whatever the 8 people in the world I run into, and it's one of the guys from the Baseball Fury.
That is freaking incredible, man.
Yeah, so that's normal. That's a normal thing with me.
You know, Dale, it's funny because you know, you did your father's documentary. Give everybody the address again, man, so they can please go watch it.
Yes, if you go on YouTube, it's Jeff Torborg, Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life, and you just type that in and go check it out. And I, like I said, I've had so many people say it's granted I'm biased, you know, because I produced it, and the guy Matt Flesh, who directed the last Comiskey documentary, that's how there's a story about how we ended up creating this documentary, and Ron Guidry's in it. You know, Buddy Bell to Kevin Millar, Ryan Dempster. There's so many people that do these interviews, and there's some amazing footage. I ended up taking my parents' archives, and I digitized over 36 hours of VHS, got a little converter, and then I scanned over 3,000 pictures.
Gosh.
And we ended up, and I just got an email today from somebody from Japan that was talking about, because they were over in Japan when my dad in 1966 in Japan, and you know, played over there in the exhibition series. And you'll see at the very end in that, when A Wonderful Life is playing by Alter Bridge, and you'll see a picture of my dad catching and Sadaharu behind him.
Wow.
Now, there's something funny too of you being a Giants fan. So the Indians time, so my brother Greg, he's a lawyer, does arbitration stuff for MLB. He's on the documentary. We didn't have Torborg on our helmets, like the little plastic helmets, and our jerseys didn't say Torborg on it. Greg said Bell 25 because his favorite was Buddy Bell.
Right.
And mine, do you know where I'm about to say? I said, you're a Giants fan. Who this is going to be?
It Bonds.
No.
Oh, because I'm thinking 25.
Yes. Kuiper. So mine said Kuiper 18 on everything. So Dwayne Kuiper was my favorite growing up.
One home run, Dwayne Kuiper.
And we missed it. My mom didn't take us to the game that day, and we saw it on TV, and we were so mad that we missed his one home run.
Oh, and what a great announcer he turned into. There, where I was going was, now that you've done this documentary, bro, have you ever thought about writing a book?
You know, it is interesting. I've had so many people ask me about it, and I don't know if it's how I see myself, and I'm like, I'm the most boring person on the planet that I don't think that people would read it. But there's so many. There are my buddy Russ, like I said, the DJ keeps saying, you've got to write a book from, you know, the stuff that you did in the movie business with A League of Their Own and Mr. Baseball and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about your baseball career. People watching this interview have no idea you were a trainer in Major League. They have no idea. We didn't even touch upon that.
Yeah, there's quite the history of a lot of different eras of my career.
I can tell you, man, I got my third book coming out with the same publisher over the next summer. If you're interested, let me know.
All right. It's funny because, do you know who Joey Casada is? He's the drummer from, they opened for Kiss at ZO2.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
So he's in the Kiss world. He's going to be playing out in Vegas. And Joey's he had a Wrestling with Joey Licious was his show. They did that show with Jericho was on it, where it was ZO2 and it was about their band. But he did some stuff with Piper and all that. But he's been one that he's written some books, and he keeps saying, bro, you've got to do it. You've got to do the book.
You know what, Dale? If not for anything else, you'd love writing it. You'd love literally sitting down and recalling all this stuff and writing about it. I mean, I just think the process would be great for you, and I think it would do great. I mean, come on, who's got a story like yours? It's so unique on so many different levels, man. You should seriously consider that.
You know, I will, you know, because in that documentary, what you saw, you know, where my dad's talking to the camera, that actually came about because of, similar to what we're talking about, is that I told my dad, I said, I want to set up a tripod and a camera. And I said, nobody can tell your stories like you.
That's right.
And I said, it was really for the family that, you know, down the road, that here's these stories in my dad's voice, him telling it, and the inflection and how he told the story. But he just looked into the camera and went. And he was an incredible public speaker. But that was 2009 is when I filmed that. It was before the Parkinson started. Yeah. And it was like the perfect time. And he basically narrated his own documentary. Yeah. And it was really it kind of ended up with him being his own narrator. It was the thread that went through. Yeah. That's why I think that documentary is really incredible.
And unique. To have that. It is, man. You guys should definitely check it out. Jeff Torborg, A Baseball Life.
A Wonderful Baseball Life.
A Wonderful Baseball Life on YouTube. Dale, this has been awesome, and it just tells me we need to do this more often, man, because you've got so many stories in that head of yours, man. We've got to do this again, man. But I thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad. I appreciate you giving me some leeway to get back. I was hustling to get home, and you know, I'm glad that it all worked out. And you know, I'm sorry for you, and sorry for us, and sorry for the Kiss fans that, you know, that this is how we started it, of losing an icon in Ace.
And the legacy will forever continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Dale Torborg, everybody. Thank you so much, Dale.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll contact you, man.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right, that was terrific, man. That's God, man. Dale is such a I don't even want to say fountain of knowledge like that. I don't even want to say wealth of knowledge. Dale knows so many things about so many things and so many people, and he's so freaking connected, and he's a great storyteller, and he's a great freaking human being. And a lot of times, bro, when guys get out of wrestling, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to bother them because, guys, if I had my druthers, I would get out of wrestling and never talk about it. But I depend on wrestling to make a living. But a lot of guys do other things now, and they really like to stay away from wrestling, so they don't want to talk about it or be bothered. I mean, that's how Ed is. You know what I mean? I would give anything to do a show with Ed Ferrara, even on a monthly basis. But Ed's away from wrestling now. And, I knew Dale was too for a while. But I swear, guys, when I got that news yesterday, and if it's cool, I want to say who sent me that text, bro. Please let me know it's cool for me to mention your name. But when I got that news about Ace, Dale Torborg was the first one who came to mind, because I knew Dale has hooked me up for Kiss concerts. Like I think Dale was with us when we were at TNA and we went to see Paul Stanley. He hooked that up. I mean, Dale's been hooking me up with Kiss forever, man. So it was great to have him. Man, I want to get to your super stickers. Danimal, any memories of Kiss from WCW? Yeah, Danimal, I spoke about them a little bit, where I did get to work with them backstage at the Phillips Arena. And I literally have videotape of that. I made sure somebody recorded it. And I have an idea of where that tape is, man. I've got to get that. I've got to get that transferred over to DVD. Social Destruct, thanks for doing this, Vince. My first show was at the Garden in '79. Ace was always my favorite. The heart and soul of the band. I've been in tears all day. Rest in peace, Ace. Yeah, guys, I can't tell you when I got that. I was literally at Famous Dave's, and I got that text, man, and I was just absolutely gutted, man. And then I was hoping maybe it wasn't true, but then when I got it confirmed, Guitar Junkie, thanks for this stream, Vince. Ace was a one and only, gonna miss his laugh. And I highly recommend, when we talk about Ace's laugh, guys, please go watch that Tom Schneider tomorrow. Please, you will thank me later. Jay Frazier, hail Vince and Dale. Favorite Ace song, Kiss and or solo? Man, I got to tell you, Jay, freaking Ace, everybody always said this. When they came out with the solo albums, Ace's was the best. Far away the best. When it comes to my favorite Ace song, a lot of people would say Shock Me. A lot of people would say New York Groove. I kind of dug Rocket Ride, man. I thought Rocket Ride was a really, really good song. Let's go on, guys. Please, man, you want to hop in here, talk about Ace, talk about Dale. We do it through super sticker or donation, guys. We got Mr. Danimal. Hey, Dale, whose DW drumhead is that? Yeah, definitely Peters. I mean, Dale knew those guys, bro. So there was no doubt about it. Let me just scroll through here, guys. Again, you want to get anything in, any comments? Here he is. Jimmy, you are here. But Jimmy, I don't know if it's cool. You got to tell me if it's cool, Jimmy. Is it cool, Jimmy? Let me go on. Let's see, guys. See if I heard from Jimmy. I don't want to say anything if it's not cool. Let's see, guys. I'm just going to see if you got any more super stickers or donations. Anything else you guys want to say about Ace or say about Dale? Or, guys, please check out that documentary about Jeff Torborg. Dale put his heart and soul into that, man. And Jimmy said, still unacceptable version of Kiss with Thayer and Singer in the makeup period. Jimmy, I agree with that. I agree with that, Jimmy. And you see, Dale felt a little differently about it. I guess what Dale was saying. Okay, yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I guess what Dale was saying was they signed off on that. So what that probably meant, bro, was there was probably a good payday involved, or even a good royalty cut. Like if you ever saw the Spaceman makeup, 2000 Man is a great song. Thank you, Mrs. Speed. I wasn't even thinking that. That's a great song. That's probably my favorite. There was probably a good deal for Ace and Peter. They probably got money signing away the rights. And then I bet you they got royalties on every time that makeup was seen as well. So, they probably made out okay. I mean, I could understand Gene and Paul's point of view. And if Ace and Peter got a payday and they were taken care of, then I guess, Jimmy, it was a win-win for everybody. Yeah, Jimmy just gave me the go-ahead. Bro, it was Jimmy who sent me that text message in the middle of my meal, and it was not out there anywhere. And Jimmy says he was pretty sure that Ace had passed, but he asked me not to say anything, and of course I wouldn't. And then sure enough, bro, I finished my meal. I got in my car, and I heard the news, and Jimmy was spot on. And I'm going to be working with Jimmy because hopefully in the very, very near future, we're going to do another very special interview that will involve the life and times of Ace Frehley. I'm going to see if I could work that out with Jimmy. But that's it, guys. I am going to wrap this up, man. I want to thank all of you guys. And man, guys, like that's the thing. It's every 10 years. And like I'm seeing I'm seeing Ozzy, and I'm seeing Hulk, and I'm seeing Ace, and these guys were in their 70s. Good old Vinny Rue is in his 60s. So, the closer the generations, the more these were people that played big parts in my life. And you guys, man, Ace was right up there, man. Guys, I want to thank you so much today for joining me. Please support Dale's documentary on his dad, guys. You'll love it, man. If you love baseball, you would love the documentary. Jeff Torborg had a great Major League Baseball career. Check that out. Guys, thank you so much for joining me, man. Have a great rest of your day. God bless you all. Have a great weekend, man.